In today's Zoom call or meeting, Q&A, whatever we call it, I'm going to be talking about heart healthy fats. And I'm going to make a couple fun things that I like to make in my kitchen and just show you a couple different cooking techniques as well. So this is such an important topic because when we're talking about cardiovascular health, one of the things I usually like to talk about when it comes to cardiovascular health is making sure we're eating lower glycemic, not a whole lot of sugar. So it's the difference between having like eating fruit versus drinking fruit juice or versus even like having, foods or dips or anything that has like high fructose corn syrup. We really want to focus on whole foods as much as we can. And, when it comes to healthy fats and oils, one of the things that's happened in the last many years, more recent years, is that rather than more traditional oils of maybe like animal fats or olive oil or even coconut oil, there's all these other seed oils on the market, and they can actually be hard on our health because they are inflammatory and they can become rancid easily. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but I really want to do in the kitchen. So I thought I would just start with showing you some of the oils and fats that I have in my kitchen. And actually I want to grab one more thing out of here. And then do a little cooking. So my standby oil that I love to use a lot is olive oil. And I'm sure everybody has olive oil in their cupboards or their fridge or wherever you keep it. I just recently traveled to Santa Barbara, and at the farmer's market, whenever I go to that particular spot, I usually grab the olive oil and olives from the olive oil guy. And so this is a good, nice olive oil from, locally grown where I was. It's interesting when it comes to olive oils because sometimes, we all probably go to Costco if you have a Costco near you. This is California organic extra virgin olive oil. Now, it doesn't say it's first cold pressed or anything like that, but one of the things, actually it does say it's first cold pressed. Yay. One of the things about that though, is if you actually buy an California organic, that means it has to be 100% olive oil. Now, you would think any oil you bought is going to be, have olives in it, only olive oil. But actually, a lot of the ones we get from Europe, they can mix them. They can mix different cheaper seed oils into our olive oil. So we want to be mindful of that. So I know everybody doesn't live in California, but that is one thing if you can ever find some. And sometimes we buy things online, sometimes we buy things locally. I mean, I'm always a fan of local, but it's a good thing to know. So there's different kinds of oils. I'm just going to talk about it for a minute. There's saturated fats, there's unsaturated fats. So saturated fats are those that are things like ghee or things like butter or any of the other animal fats that become solid at room temperature. And also things like coconut oil. Okay. When a fat is saturated, it means that it holds up to higher heat if we're going to cook with it. As soon as the fat is more liquidy, and it's by its nature, not just because it's hot, but like liquidy, like olive oil and any of the other like canola, corn, soy, sesame, etc., flax, hemp. I'm not going to say I'm a fan of all those I just mentioned. I'll talk about it. But those fats are, they can't handle high heat the same way that the saturated fats can. So we want to be careful when we're cooking with those oils and how high of heat. Now, the other thing is for a lot of people, even in the last few years, I've seen this a lot. Like a lot of people are eating more, saturated fats and eating more coconut oil or maybe doing keto. And then they go to their doctor and their cholesterol is risen up pretty high. So what that actually means is that, well, it means a few things, but it means that you're able to grab a lot of that cholesterol, a lot of that fat, and it's raising your cholesterol. Coconut oil in particular, a lot of people raise their coconut oil consumption and their cholesterol went up. So if that's your case at all, then you want to stick to more unsaturated fats, plant fats, even coconut oil, even though that is a plant fat. It's going to help you to lower your cholesterol. But again, we want to make sure we're not always cooking those oils. So that's where there's a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to show you a couple ways that I like to do it. So here's the other thing. I'm more of a fan of olive oil. So I've got this olive oil, and I was pulling out this one too. This is another like local olive oil from, I live in Sonoma County, California, and this is actually from our junior college, has a beautiful organic farm. And here's another olive oil, and it's in a smaller bottle. So if you don't go through it very fast, get the smaller bottles and, make sure the bottle is dark. And after today, I think you'll understand how you can maybe not go through it as fast. Avocado oil is kind of like the new kid on the block oil. This is okay. I use it for a few things, but I kind of tend to stick to my olive oil more often. I kind of try to maybe eat more avocados instead of using a lot of avocado oil. Now, olive oil and avocado oil and macadamia nut oil, that's a monounsaturated fat. So that's a type of fat that is a longer chain. So here's what's interesting. Saturated fats, animal fats, are short chain, like the molecular. And then medium chain triglycerides, medium chain fats are like coconut oil, a little bit longer. And then monounsaturated fat is a little bit longer. And it's not saturated with hydrogen. So there's a little bit of, like, if you looked at the structure, there's things called cis and there's movement. That's why it's liquidy. Then we get into polyunsaturated fats, much longer. So we've got omega-6 and omega-3. Now, omega-6 and omega-3, we call essential fatty acids. It means we have to get them from our food. Now, I have to get them from my food. Sorry. I have to get them from the foods that I'm eating. Now, omega-6, omega-3 comes from like nuts and seeds and maybe eating seafood, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts, almonds, pumpkin seeds. All of those are going to give it to us. Now, I'm more of a fan of eat those nuts and seeds rather than have all those oils stocked in your cupboards. I could say maybe having some hemp or flax can be good, but in general, eating those is going to be better than having a whole bunch of oils. And the reason I say that is because we need like about 3 to 4 amount of omega-6 to omega-3. So it's like a 4-to-1 ratio. Okay. If you lived in like the Arctic and it was freezing and you didn't have access to lots of nuts and seeds, that ratio would be more like 1-to-1. But if you live in the tropics, it might be more like this. So we've got this ratio. We need omega-6. Omega-6 breaks down in the body and helps us with inflammation. If I cut my finger, I need a little inflammation there to help me to heal, to keep the bacteria out. And that comes from the omega-6s that I eat. Now, if I eat too many of them, then that could lead to more inflammation because that's the job that it does. So there's going to be excess of these inflammatory molecules that can make inflammation. Whereas whereas omega-3 helps me to lower inflammation. So it's like this, we need inflammation. That's an immune response, but we need to bring it down. So we have this balance. In the last 50 or so years, if you go and buy a salad dressing from the market, it's probably not made with olive oil. You have to search. If you buy a hummus or a dip or a spread, things that traditionally used to use olive oil, they are now using canola, soy, corn, safflower, sunflower, blah, 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 blah. Those are cheap seed oils that can raise inflammation in the body. We want to avoid those, okay? And there's a lot of research online. There is some controversy, but in a holistic approach, if we look at the science, those can be more inflammatory. So we want to stick with whole foods. So you can eat sunflower seeds, you can eat walnuts and you can't eat canola, so don't worry about canola. You don't need it. You don't usually, you can eat a little bit of soy, you can eat some corn, but we don't need those oils. Those oils are high in omega-6 and they can be inflammatory if we get too much of them. And it becomes inflammatory on a cellular level. And that's, on a cellular membrane level. And that's how our cells communicate. So we don't want our cells to not be able to communicate. We don't want our cells to not allow nutrients in and waste out. And that's what can sometimes happen when it comes to even insulin resistance. It's like the cells, if it's the wrong kind of fat, the cells can be maybe more inflamed and rigid, and it's harder for things to come in and things to leave. So we want to make sure that we have these nice, healthy cell membranes that are fluid, that, things, our tissues can communicate, because that's how our cells communicate with our receptors. So the quality of our fat really does make a difference. So it's so easy to outsource our food all the time, right? I mean, it's so easy to be like, oh, I have to make salad dressing. I can just pull it out of the fridge and dump it on there, right? But I can make one. Or what if you want a pesto or a dip or a spread or anything, or even cooking with oils? So I'm going to dive in and I'm going to start with making a pesto. But, if anybody has questions, you can always put it in the chat, or if you can figure out how to unmute, you can unmute. But I decided I was going to make a pesto today. And unfortunately, this year in my garden, I only have one sorry little basil. Like my basil just didn't take this year. So I decided I'm going to make a kale pesto. Yum. And this is going to be something that will have raw oils. Okay, so I didn't even get to my main point, which I need to get to before I go. The thing about what I said, how sensitive oils are, it is better for our body, keeping the oil full of all the antioxidants. You know how you hear, oh, olive oil has all these antioxidants, but we can cook those antioxidants off when we cook with our oils. So I'm going to show you how to not cook with your oils and eat your oils more raw. So I always like to say, as a nutritionist, I'm not a raw foodist, but I do like my oils to be raw, my fats and oils to be raw as much as I can. I mean, obviously it's not going to happen all the time. And I do cook with oil and I do cook with olive oil, but I try not to do it all the time. I try to have a philosophy in my kitchen and just in my life as like 80-20, right? 80% of the time I am trying to eat for my health and do things for my health. 20% of the time I can play. I'm not perfect, so I cut myself some slack. Sometimes I stay up late. Sometimes I eat sugar, sometimes maybe I drink too much, whatever it is, right? Like I'm not perfect with my diet, but if I'm 80% practicing what I'm preaching and what I'm learning and how I know is going to be helpful to my body, then I am feeling healthy and vital. And that's what I want. If I get sick, if I'm working on a specific goal, if I don't feel well, then I might be 100%, and I might live in that 100% for a while. And that is really important too. And, if I have a goal that I'm focusing on and I really want my health and I don't have it, there's no reason why I wouldn't want to be 100%. But in general, I'm just saying, like, I'm not perfect. I'm just doing the best that I can. So I'm going to put this one little measly basil in my Cuisinart. I'm going to just load my thing down so you can see this. So I've got, and I am going to, this is the seed head happening, and I'm going to put that all in there. So it'll have a little basil essence. Then I have some kale. Now, the thing about this kale, I will say, is it's kind of like younger and it's the first harvest. So I'm going to use these nice kind of more tender ones. I have some more that I'm going to do another project with that are just a little bit bigger and a little bit like firmer. So I'm going to save these for another project. Again, this one, look at this beautiful red kale. So what I do is I just pull the stems off, sorry. I just pull the stems off and I can break it up a little bit. The nice thing about a Cuisinart is you don't have to do a whole lot of chopping and all that kind of stuff. So I'm probably going to put in about a bunch of kale because it does break down. And the really amazing thing about kale is that when it gets chopped up on the cell membrane of the kale plant, there is an enzyme. And for short, I'm just going to call it ICT because I don't know if I say the word right. It's like isothiocyanates or something like that. But basically, they are activated when we either chew them or when they're blended, and they're very anti-cancer, and they're good for hormonal balance. There's like over 120 of them that we've identified, and they all play a really good role in supporting the body with breaking down excess hormones and protecting the stomach from stomach cancer and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so I've got my Cuisinart kind of packed full of kale, right? Oh, you know, I kind of learned a new way to do this, and I just forgot. My friend showed me, so I'm gonna just make a change. So I'm gonna actually, I'll show you a trick with this. Change something. So I'm gonna take this out and blend my nuts first, get them broken down. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my finger right in the Cuisinart, and that's going to hold my blade down. So I don't have to worry about my blade falling out of this. So, okay, I'll put my greens back in a second. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add my, my walnuts. You can use any kind of nut or seed that you would like to use. It's really, it really is up to you. Like I like walnuts. These are actually soaked and sprouted and dehydrated walnuts. I'm kind of high maintenance. Not perfect, but I'm just measuring this in case you want to recreate this. So, you know, I'm going to put about a cup in here of walnuts. And the reason that I soak and sprout and dehydrate my walnuts, it's not just because I'm high maintenance. It's also because it's mostly because, when I used to eat walnuts, I didn't eat them for many years because they would give me canker sores. And so I stopped eating them. And then I learned that when you sprout them, they're much less bitter and they don't do the same. And so a canker sore is like an immune reaction. So they don't give me that immune reaction. So that feels really good to not have that. Okay, so I'm going to put a little garlic in there. This is garlic from my garden. All right. So I'm just going to give it a tiny little chop, but I don't really need to chop it much because it's going in the Cuisinart. Yay. Okay. So I'm just going to blend this first. Okay. So that just gives it a nice base. It's blended. And then I'm going to add my greens back in there. I forgot my new trick. And then I'm going to add my olive oil. And I'm also going to add some lemon juice because that'll really add a nice flavor. So far I've got a clove of garlic. You can certainly add more. But sometimes garlic, if somebody has digestive issues, like maybe they have a lot of bloating, garlic wouldn't be the best for them. Or if they kind of have a tender stomach, it might not be the best either. But for the rest of us, there's never too much garlic. Okay, I'm also going to add some salt. So I'm going to do just, and if you're salt sensitive, you can also do this at the very end and make sure, or even leave the salt out and let other people salt their own pesto. And I'm just going to pour a little olive oil. So I will measure this. So I'm going to measure out about a 1/4 cup to start and see what that looks like. All right, I think I'll just start there and blend, see what that looks like. All right, so I am going to taste this now. It looks like I could blend it a little bit more, and it definitely has a creamy look to it because I put a whole cup of walnuts in there. Let me just see. Really good. I think I am going to put a little bit more lemon, and lemon will also I'm just going to do half. Lemon will act as a preservative, which is nice. And I think I'll just put another little splash of olive oil just because it's not super wet. And I'll show you guys in a second. So maybe another like couple tablespoons I just put in. All right. Oh yeah, it's looking good. So let's see. Oh, you know what would be really good in this? And I even have is I'll show you. If I can find it. I dry little sun gold tomatoes in the summertime in my dehydrator, and they would be really good in that because it would just add like a whole nother level of like, what is that? Okay, I'm just gonna taste this. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm sorry that you can't taste it with me. It is super delicious. And it's good to go. Now, what am I gonna do with this amazing pesto now that I have it? Honestly, this is like adding, you know, we always think of like superfoods and greens. You can add this to just about anything. And you can add it to like on top of a soup. You can spread it on toast or like a sweet potato or any kind of potato or any kind of root vegetable. You can add it into salad dressing, which I will do in a minute. So many different things with this, but just as a topper on any meal, sauteed greens, it would really go well on any of those things. It's like adding a little superfood to your meal, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and put it right into a Tupperware. So it's easy for me to access, you know, and sometimes you'll notice if you ever made pesto before, sometimes like it will turn a little dark on the top. So what you can do is even coat it with just a little extra olive oil. And sometimes it does the trick. So I'm just going to pull all that out. You want to see another Cuisinart trick that I have up my sleeve? I'll show you. Okay, like I did pretty good getting most of it out, but what if I was like, oh my God, that is the best pesto I've ever had in my life. I don't want to miss out on an ounce of it. So put it back in and just blend it for a second. And what happens is your blade has been cleaned by that last little bit, and all the rest of the pesto came out to the outside. So it's really easy just to grab it all. And look how much I have, a whole nother tablespoon. So if you don't like to waste, and I don't blame you, I'm kind of in that boat sometimes. Although, you know, we all probably have to sometimes throw things away and we're like, oh my gosh, can't believe I bought that and I didn't eat it. One of my clients says, you know, I'm really tired of having $1 million compost pile. Okay, there we have it. Now, again, like I said, if I want to make sure it's not going to turn on me a little bit, I can just put a little extra olive oil on top, and that'll kind of protect it a little bit. There we go. So now I have this wonderful pesto. I am just going to put a lid on it right now. And, you know, I usually keep it in the fridge. Now, I'm going to show you the next thing I'm going to make. I'm going to make 2 more things, and then we'll kind of open it up for any Q&A. The other thing, or actually I could make 3 things, depends if we have time. Okay, so now let's say I'm like, wow, okay, now I want to make like a salad dressing. Like, okay, you're right. I looked in my fridge and I noticed all my salad dressings are like soy oil or canola oil. Those are all going to be inflammatory. They're cheap. That's why they switched from olive oil to canola or soy or safflower or corn. Those are not typically used in our, you know, they're not traditional oils. A lot of them are GMO. They're just newer. So instead, you're going to make your own. Now I have a couple ways I do it. Sometimes I call my salad dressing my lazy dressing. This has been lately, where I'll just take a little lemon and I'll drizzle it over the top of my greens. I might drizzle a tiny bit of honey and a little bit of vinegar and a little olive oil, a little salt, and then I just toss it and boom. But oftentimes I also like to just make it in a little mason jar, and you can just shake it up and have an instant dressing. And I know it's not rocket science, but it's pretty simple to do. So when you put mustard, and this is like the dregs of the mustard. So when you put mustard in a dressing, that actually helps it to emulsify, which is like the thickening that it in the combining that it has to do, right? So I put about a teaspoon of mustard in here to start in my barely any left mustard. And then I'm going to also put a little bit of salt and pepper. This, there we go. Salt and pepper. And again, if you're salt sensitive, you can hold off on that, but this just combines the flavors and it's not a lot of salt. If you are not eating processed foods and the only salt you use is what you add to taste, you should be okay. If you're eating processed foods, then you really have to watch out for extra added salts. I'm going to put this other half of this lemon in here and boom. And then I'm going to give it a little stir. Now, I also like to add garlic, right? And other things. So, hey, I have a good idea. I'm just going to throw a little bit of my pesto in my salad dressing just to make it really easy for me to make this. So I'm just going to put about a tablespoon of this in here. Boom. See how easy that was. Okay. So I love doing that because once I know I have, and you can, that's a very simple pesto. I mean, sometimes you can put spices and other herbs. It would have been good to put maybe like a little thyme. So now I've got this nice creamy base, and then I'm going to add a little vinegar. And this is another place that you can kind of have fun with salads, I think anyways, is I've got a really nice red wine vinegar. Okay. I've been enjoying that lately. Now for Easter this year, my kids are older now, and when do kids ever want to not get presents? So instead I've been getting like little gourmet. So I bought this walnut champagne vinegar, which I love. My husband's not a big fan of, and my daughter never took hers. So I have it now, but it's just different. It's got a really nice smell. It's just different. So sometimes just making your salad, kind of spicing it up a little, is by adding a different vinegar. I also have rice wine vinegar. I usually have apple cider vinegar, but I'm out. And then I've got a big balsamic. I think for this vinegar or this salad dressing, I'm going to use a little red wine because I am thinking that I'll probably use this tonight for dinner, and my husband's not a huge fan of this. So I'm going to be nice. So I'm going to put in, so usually when you make a salad dressing, it's like it's a lot less vinegar to olive oil. So I'm not going to do a whole lot. I'll probably do, why don't I get my measuring now? So I can be exact. So I'll probably do about 2 tablespoons, because I also have the lemon. I also have the mustard. So I have a couple other kind of soury, acidic things. I've got 2 of these, but if I wanted to make it enough for the week and not think about it, I could do even more and then make a much bigger jar, but I'm not going to make a huge amount. Okay, so then I'm going to add my olive oil, and I will add it using this, and I'm going to start with about a 1/4 cup. This is a 1/2 cup, so I'm just filling it halfway. And then a really easy way to do these dressings is honestly just put a lid on it and then shake it. And it's super simple to make. Okay, now you're going to taste it. Now it's easy to think of just like putting a finger in your dressing or something like that. But what I've learned is, instead of doing it like that, is to actually, this is your canvas. This is your paint. So why don't you try it with that? So I'm just going to take, that's kind of big, a little piece of lettuce, and I'm just going to dip it in there and see how that is. Okay, so I'm going to add another 1/4 cup of olive oil just because it's pretty sour. And then I'm going to give it another shake. And you can also use a fork and just, you know, saute it, or mix it up. Okay, and I'll just give it another taste. And it's definitely thick. The other thing I love to add to my dressing, and I think that that's kind of what it might need for me, is just a little bit of honey. Not a lot, just like maybe a teaspoon or even a 1/2 teaspoon actually. Just to give it a little, like round out all the flavors. I've got sour, I've got salty, you know, I've got the herbs and the pungent and bitter from the herbs and the garlic. But yeah, just a little bit extra, just making it a little bit more like that. So there we have it. All right. I probably won't taste it again because that'll take a minute to kind of meld in. Just tainted my honey lid. Okay, so there I've got a homemade salad dressing. This honestly will last me a few days. If I know I'm going to eat it in the next couple days, I can just leave this on my counter. I don't have to put it in the fridge. Nothing is going to go bad. But I want to use it up. I don't want to like find it 2 weeks later, and you know, it's just better to use it sooner than later. But there I have it, a really nice dressing. No canola, no soy, no corn. It's just pure olive oil. I know exactly what's in it. No emulsifiers. To be honest with you, like a lot of the salad dressings these days, they put the xanthan gum and I can taste it. So I just don't really like that flavor of whatever it is that they add in to help emulsify things. And it's really not that hard to do it. And you're going to save money too. Okay. So I want to show you one more thing in the kitchen. But if there are any questions or comments, now is a great time if anybody wants to ask anything or share anything. Are you having fun yet? Okay. All right. So what I want to show you is another one that I think is, again, there's a simplicity to it. Oh, yay. Thanks, Judy. There's a simplicity to it, but you know, it's so important. And so remember I was saying earlier at the beginning, like it's good not to always cook your oils. Well, how the heck do you do that? So I am going to show you how I do it in my kitchen. And I'm going to make a little stir fry, and I might as well make it super yum. Just trying to find my garlic. I'm not sure where I put it in the demo or if it fell down. Anybody see where I put it? No, just kidding. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So like I said before, I have these really nice, I'm going to just change the direction. There we go. I have this really nice, beautiful kale I just picked from my garden. I'm super pleased with my kale this year. It's doing really well. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just, again, going to take the stem and just peel it. I didn't get all the stem on that one, but that's kind of okay because I'm going to saute it, but I can get rid of a little bit more. And I'm just going to come and do the same thing here. So it's such an easy way to deal with your kale. And one more. Now what I usually do, I am going to turn my heat on my stove. All right. And what I usually do is I like to have all my kale leaves kind of lined up and facing the same way. And then I'll put all the little stragglers on top. And then in this case, what I will do is now that I've got them in a nice bundle, I'm going to just roll them up. And this just makes it super quick and easy for me to cook them. And that's kind of what I like to go for in my kitchen. I'm like, make it quick, make it easy. Let's get this done. Okay, so I'm just going to now watch my fingers, but I'm just going to go and slice through the kale one at a time, you know, just nice and thin. And now there are some bigger leaves in here. So I'm just going to go that way. Now I'm going to come back and go this way one more time. So I'm just going to come back through. So now I'm thinking about like bite-sized pieces for my mouth, not too big. And then I'm just going to get a little bit of garlic in there too. And, garlic tends to cook pretty quick. So I don't want to, I want to put it in at the very beginning. I might want to put it in a little after. So I've got I don't have any oil in my pan. I'm not going to put any oil in my pan. I'm going to put my kale in there. Okay. Now this is how you do a quick green saute in no time. Okay. I'm going to chop up my garlic. And then I'm just going to throw that on top. And I'm going to add a little water from just my tea kettle. Right? And then I'm going to put a lid on it. It's almost like I'm steaming my greens. Super simple. Now I have a few nuts left over from my pesto. So I'm going to just take a handful because that's about a serving. I don't need much more than that if it's a meal. So the thing with nuts and seeds, they are really good for us, but if we eat way too many of them, not so much. It's too much omega-6. A lot of times people say, well, I eat like a cup when I'm sitting down watching TV, and I'm like, whoa, too much, a little handful, a couple handfuls a day is perfect. And then I'll grab a little bowl. Then I will give this a little looky-loo. And so my greens are starting to darken. There's still water on the bottom. And I'm just gonna let them go for a few more minutes. Now, it just depends, like, how do you like your greens? Some people need them cooked because otherwise they're too hard on their stomach. If you have a low thyroid condition, you might want to make sure your greens are cooked. It doesn't mean you can't eat them, even though some people say, oh, I have low thyroid, I can't eat any greens. It just means you eat, you're mindful of eating them raw all the time and things like that. Okay, so they're still cooking. They're almost done. I haven't salted or peppered or lemon juiced or anything them, right? Sometimes a little vinegar is good in there, but I'm going to keep these super simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, they're almost done, right? Again, I'm not cooking the oil yet. And the garlic I can smell the garlic. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to squeeze a little lemon juice on there. I like that. If that doesn't appeal to you, then you don't have to do that. Just a little, sometimes it helps with breaking down the greens, like the citrus, the acid kind of helps break things down, adds a little antioxidant. Now, if I was going to save, I'm going to save my oil for the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour, look at that beautiful purple water. Can you see that from the kale? So I'm just going to pour my greens in there. Then what I'm going to do is I could at this point just drizzle a little olive oil over the top, but why do that when I have pesto? So I am going to put a little bit of that pesto right on top, and I can mix it in there, right? Just mix it in. I've got all that flavor. So now my oils, they're getting warm, but they're not hot on the pan. So I'm still gonna preserve all those antioxidants. It's not, sometimes what can happen when we cook and eat a lot of fried food is that it becomes a trans fat. And that is really hard on the cardiovascular system. That is hard on the vessels and veins and arteries. And that's one of the contributing factors to plaques and high cholesterol and high blood pressure. So yeah, you're going to go out to eat sometimes and you're going to maybe order the French fries, right? or maybe you'll have a few of your spouses or something. So instead of, so that's where, like, when you're home and you're cooking for yourself at home, then you want to be mindful of the kinds of oils and fats you're using. Because it's very hard to be perfect. There are some people that claim to be perfect, but I'm not one of them. It's too hard. Then I'm going to just drizzle the walnuts on the top. And this is a super simple, and if you like you could throw some Parmesan cheese on top. I mean, there's other things you can do that are still going to make it really delicious. But now I've got all this pesto in here. I've got healthy fats, all the walnuts and garlic, and I'm going to taste it and see, make sure it's actually as good as I'm claiming it to be. Yeah, it is. But this could be a wonderful greens dish. And, you might try this and be like, Mary Sheila, that looks good, but I know I can make it better. Then, just make it better, like up level it. You could have, if you have a lot of zucchini, you can do the same thing with zucchini. You can add zucchini in this. You can do it with chard. You can do onions in there. You could start with onions first. There's a lot of ways you can really make things really delicious. So I'm going to take a little pause from my monologue and just see if there's any questions or comments or anything or any other, is there any other questions about cardiovascular or any question at all that anybody might have? And I know, it might be easier not to say anything, and that's fine. But if you do want to jump on here, okay, great. Which oils go rancid? Okay, so I'm so glad you asked that question. Any fat and oil can go rancid, even butter and, even animal fats. So the best way to test for rancid oil is to, every time you open your oils, is to smell them, especially if you're like, ooh, that oil's been in the fridge for a long time. You can do the same thing with nuts, with seeds, with crackers, with chips, with any of that stuff. They can all go rancid over time, because oils are processed. They're we take, an olive and we press it into an oil. So it's more of a processed food. And so and fats are bound to oxygen, so they can oxidize, and oxidation happens when things are exposed to heat, light, and air. So that is where we have to be careful of, of rancidity. So I didn't do that in my video, but I'm pretty good, although I know all my oils, about smelling my oils before I use them, or even smelling nuts and seeds. Like here I have some sunflower seeds, and I can smell, and they don't smell rancid to me, but I could smell if they do. In fact, recently I've gotten into pecans lately, and I usually actually get my pecans at Costco, and I got them at a kind of a local market that I love in Sonoma County. And, they're not cheap, they're expensive nuts. And I bought some, and they were almost all rancid, and I couldn't eat them, and I didn't take them back. I should have, but I ended up just throwing them away. But, you can taste it sometimes. So it's just important to stay on top of our fats and oils. And if you, after watching this, go through your cupboard and you're like, when did I buy that? How many years ago did I buy that? Then it might be a good one to get rid of, which, or make sure you smell it and see. Yeah, so that's a good question. So all of them can go rancid. You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? I hope this was helpful. And yeah, and let me just see what else I want to say. And also I'd love to know too, if there's any other Zoom topics that you'd like for next month, and future topics. But ultimately what I think is really important is when we start really paying attention to the quality of what we're putting in our bodies and being kind of in charge and not outsourcing. Because I think the outsourcing of our food to feeling like, oh, I can't make a dressing or a dip, like my hummus or, whatever it is that we can make, like we can make those things. And we traditionally have made those things. And when we outsource them, usually the people making them are going to try to, make them as cost effective as they can for their bottom line, which I totally understand. But, we have to make sure that we're not, there's still quality that's there. So it's more about finding the right, making sure the right ingredients are in the foods that we love, especially if you love food and love to eat. It's like, you just want to make sure you're putting in good quality ingredients. So, yeah. So that's about what I have to say today. And I appreciate you guys being here. And thank you so much. And I hope this is helpful. And I hope that you got some good ideas. And I hope that I'll see you at the next one. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.